Okay, welcome to, I don't know, it's a Thursday stream. We're going to be talking about the Logic Pro browser today, the things that came out in the most recent version. I haven't made a video about this yet, but I've been wanting to and waiting. It actually turns out in some ways that streaming and using your iPad screen while streaming is a little bit of a tricky proposition, and so we're going to go for it today. Talk about this. This is to be clear, full transparency. We're talking about the new features of the Logic Pro browser that came out in the iPad version, because that this is one of the places where we got some new features that we hadn't had and we still don't have on the Mac version of Logic. And so I think it's worth looking at what the future of our browser is for the Mac version, because undoubtedly they wouldn't be putting this amount of effort into a browser if it wasn't going to be the browser of the future and the browser of the present, because it does work inside of Logic Pro for iPad. And I actually, the more I'm using this, the more excited I'm getting about it, because I do think it's actually really interesting and very powerful in some ways. Specifically, I want to start by talking about the main new feature, which is music understanding. That's what they're calling it, not in caps. So that means it's not like an official term or branding, but they're saying you have now some musical understanding in your typing inside of the browser, and so that's what we're going to look at. And I think it's really exciting in many ways. I'm hoping that we can have a good conversation about this, although we'll see. Um, oh, we just lost my. There we go. Okay, cool. That's annoying. I forgot about a feature that we have inside Mac OS where my mouse becomes the mouse of Logic or the iPad. And so I got to figure out on the stream how to pull that off. There we go. Cool. Whoa. Okay, we're back. And actually, that's interesting. So maybe I will use that a little bit if we can sort it out. Cool. Okay, so let's talk about this for a second. And I want to look at this feature, explain it a little bit, the musical understanding inside this browser. If you're watching live, let me know if you can see everything okay. It's a little tricky with putting the screen up, but I can probably adjust the size if we need to. And so that's kind of cool. What we're going to do, okay, first, this feature currently only works with the loops. It doesn't work with the instrument patches and the other parts of the browser. It is just in the loops area, and I'm hoping it'll expand. There's probably some work to be done in order to also make it work with like the instrument patches, which I think would be extremely useful to be able to search instrument patches using more normal language. And that's what the musical understanding is. It's the ability to type in a description without having to get it exactly with the title or the instrument or any other part of this. So we can just type something that we're looking for. I was experimenting with this before the stream started, and I was typing. Oh my gosh. This is going to be fun. Yes. What I'm experiencing right now is that the Mac has taken over the iPad, but it's not letting me type. We may have to do this a little different way, which is fine. But you type in the words there and it'll pull stuff up. We're going to sort this out in just a second. The other part to this is Once we find things that we want, then we're able to, let me see if this will, we're able to drag stuff up and use it to find other similar things. Okay, we're having a slight technical problem once we went on the stream. Let's see if I can sort it out. We're going to switch screens for just a second. Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay, cool. We're going to sort this out in just 1 second. Give me a second. Hate it when things go sideways. But that's why we figure this stuff out. Okay, so are we back? Yeah, we're back. Oh, well. Okay, well, we're kind of back. So I have this loop playing, or just the drum, session drummer, in the main part of Logic. Okay, and I'm just going to pull, first of all, for this first demonstration, this top loop. And you click, hold it, and drag it up into there. And it says if you drag here, then you can search for similar sounds. And so once you do that, it adds a little bit of a filter, in this case with the name of it, but it's also going a little deeper in there. But now we've got electric piano. So it's able to give us a bunch of options that sound like the one we were looking for. Now, this is in addition to all of these other filter choices that we have built in as well. So if we're looking in here, we can come through a lot of swiping to find different things. We can do it by type, instrument specifics, instrument plugins, synth, sound packs, genre, descriptors, performance, effects, and musical properties. So we have a lot of different options with that. Already, this feels so much better in many ways than what we have on the Mac version of Logic. Just because we have a lot more options for the filtering. Some of the stuff was in the previous version of the iPad version, but the ability to do this with the musical understanding is a big deal. I'm going to switch out of here for 1 more second, just because I'm going to close Logic. It's still not letting me type, even though I don't have a keyboard attached. I wonder if I accidentally have a Bluetooth keyboard around. I don't think I do. This will be so much fun. Okay, we're trying this a different way. Just because something's going on with the stream. Okay, so back to the screen. And what we're going to do is, I just typed it out in a different place. I'm going to paste it in here. Circus music was what I was goofing around with. If you look right below where I typed circus music over there, it now says with the little, the Apple Intelligence sparkles, sounds like circus music, or I can do name contains circus music. Those are the two choices. But I'm just going to hit search for now, and it will bring up all of these options. And you can, I've experimented quite a bit with this in terms of typing different things, and it does really well. we'll experiment with some of these as we go. Hopefully I can get... I can get my keyboard to actually work on screen, which would be nice, but we'll see that. Hey, Plastodon, how's it going? Thanks for joining. So anyway, let's play a couple of these ones that I said circus music. We'll see how close. I mean, this is, I'm not going to be offended if this doesn't work right because I didn't design it, but I am curious to see just how, where we can go with this. I mean, I can see why they're pulling these examples when we're going with circus music for sure. And so that's, I mean, it's interesting. I think it's interesting. Okay, let's do, another thing that I really like about this is that if we're playing the project, it won't pull it into a key signature. It's not really capable of doing that for the most part, but it can play at least in time and match what else we have going on. And if we're like, ooh, I really like that one, but it's not quite right, we can drag that one up and it will load it up as the next search item, and then we can see what else it comes up with. Some of them are still going to need some work in terms of quantization or groove matching. And so that's just the starting point of looking at it. But it is nice that we can just easily go through these. If we find one we like, we can add it on. We can also add other things in here to help us fine tune this, which is kind of nice as well. So it's like, let's add alchemy as a choice. And now all we're doing is getting patches that have alchemy as their source. Although I see... No, it looks like they're all alchemy, which is kind of fun. Now, once we find one of these we like, there's a few things we can do next. One of them is we can just drag it out onto an empty track, and it's going to want to do one of those things we do with Logic on the desktop, make it a sample alchemy, but that's an audio version of it. If we want to use this as, an actual MIDI or other type of track, we have to drag it out onto the track area, at which time it loads that up. Or if we had a different instrument track here, then we could have potentially pulled it straight onto one of those. I don't think that first one lets me. But we could replace something with it as well. So we have some options to use this, and all of a sudden we can come through. You see the alchemy patch here. Let's make that a little shorter. All because we started with the loop browser, which gave us access to the musical understanding option, which then let us do the search for things that sound like this and then filter it up by a certain instrument. I think all of those things together are pretty awesome. Hey, David Gilden, how's it going? Ooh, we got the good audience today. I mean, I don't think I paid enough in my dues to do that, but we have this is going to be exciting. Okay, questions. How good does it work? That's one of the big questions I had at the beginning. And at first I was a little skeptical, but the more I've used it, the more I thought, this is actually a really interesting way to find things. Interesting way to find different sounds or reuse some of the loops that maybe I'm never going to find on my own. I think that part of it is really exciting. Hey, George, how's it going? Um, it's just one of those things that if we can make the browser better, then I'm all for it. Question number 2, why in the world did they release the current version of Logic for Mac and not have this involved with it? Why is this just on the iPad? That's a good question. And one I don't actually have the answer to. Because, well, I don't know. I just don't have the answer to it. Ooh, there we go. I got my mouse in here now. That's kind of fun. Loops. Cool. And so I just want to clear this out. Clear all. I want to see if my typing keyboard here works. Yeah, it does. European mountain vacation. Right? Why not? Why not try something crazy? Who knows if any of those are accurate or how they exactly figured out what it is I was looking for, but they all kind of sound like a 90s vacation to the European mountains, I guess. What does that even mean? Let's try something more practical. Let's do funky horn section. And let's add another filter here. I want to do something 60s. I'm here in the 60s with that for sure. But I'm laughing that I said funky horn section and it gave me trumpets, take me home saxes, and then it goes into a guitar and keyboards. I'm guessing that just means that they didn't have a ton of things to pull from. And that's okay. I mean, that's the one thing we're always going to be facing with some of these tools is that the size of the bank is what matters, you know? How many options are they allowing us to pull from? So let's go out of the 70s. Let's enter the 80s. Not tons for each. But we do have, let's pull this off for a second. Or let's just delete that track. Delete. I do like using the mouse more than my finger when I'm doing a stream, so it's kind of nice that that started working correctly. Oof. Okay, I actually kind of like the Rockaway Imposture organ. Let's pull that up and do a search for other ones like it. Oh yeah, I can hear some similarities. Starts to get more and more different, but it's actually very similar. Let's see. Awesome. And so that the new way of working with that particular part of Logic on the iPad, with the browser, where we have the ability just to type things that we're thinking and have it kind of sorted out. That I think is a huge step forward. And one, I haven't seen as many, I mean, not many people are actually talking about it. And I wonder if part of the reason it's not being talked about is because people aren't talking about the iPad version of Logic that much. I know people are using it. There are certainly people using it, but I don't know. It's like I don't see as many people on the forums, Reddit, Facebook, even in my comments, talking about the iPad version that much. I would love to know. There's almost 30 of you right now. How many of you use the iPad version of Logic Pro? I would love to know. Let's see if I can actually do this the fun way. Start a poll. Which version? Mac and iPad. Start the poll. So I just put a poll up. I'm curious. Take a second. And we'll see. I mean, even if we just get 5 or 10 people, that would be awesome. David says desktop only. Taxi Williams, I'm assuming you mean you don't use the iPad. Placidon, not the iPad. We have 3 people who have done the poll, and 2 of them use the Mac and 1 use the iPad. But the Mac number is going up with 4 votes. Okay, cool. I'm just going to leave that up for a few minutes. I 90% of the time use the Mac version. There's things it can do that the iPad version can't do. iPad version doesn't really do anything with spatial audio. It doesn't do things with any other surround formats, really. It doesn't have a score editor, which I use regularly. But it has a number of things that are awesome. David's asking who's using Logic Remote with iPad, and that is a different story. I use the Logic Remote with iPad regularly. That is still one of my favorite ways of doing it, because you get a lot of the cool part of the multi-touch interface without having to compromise real estate. And so with real estate, what I mean is, I've got one of the small iPad Pros. It's in a silicon processor, but it's a small screen. It is hard. It is hard to use. I actually have an external portable monitor that can just actually powers off of the Logic bus if I had to do it that way, but I prefer to plug it in so I don't just drain the battery. And it's bigger than my iPad screen. And when I use Logic, I actually use that. But it gives you don't have the touch interface at that point. And so what we're looking at then is, oh man, it is tricky. Okay, let me get back onto, okay, there's my mouse. It is tricky with all of this, but it is possible to get used to it. It's possible to get used to this interface because we have, they're really trying to design it in a way to make it usable. And the tiles. This is another thing that we don't have on the Mac version, which I would add in a second. I love the tiles. I like how they look. I like the information that it's giving me. I mean, look at this is a preset EQ. I would never probably EQ anything like that, but it gives us the ability to see key pieces of information without having to do too much. It's like the smart controls, but better looking, more concise, and simpler, right? And so we also have the ability to do a couple things with this that we can't do any other way, which is, for instance, to add effects and reorganize effects. I mean, so I'm like changing things that are on the mixer straight from here. On the compressor, I've got my threshold, attack, and release, the things I need most in a short amount of time. And if I need more, I just double click and it brings up the whole thing. And then I can just easily go back down and put it back. So are these always the most important things to show? Not always, but sometimes it's nice to just have, a few of the things. And if I need to go further, I can pull this up, go to my EQ and keep on making changes, get back out of here. And then all of a sudden I can just keep that in mind. So this is almost like a new way of mixing in some ways. And I feel like they could take the tiles and do some really cool things with the tiles, meaning that they could, have tiles for a bunch of different channels, but maybe put them vertical so it's almost like an alternate mix window. And you can reorganize and go into each of these things. That to me would be an innovation that I think I could get behind because it wouldn't take a long time to adopt it. One of the best things about the tiles is that it didn't take any time for me to get used to it. It was obvious how to use them. I think that that's really brilliant. There was a question about an update today. No, we're just finally covering the browser that's on the iPad. I felt like it hasn't been talked about enough. We'll go back to that here in a second, but we were doing a demonstration of how the musical understanding feature in Logic is actually really interesting. Does anybody want me to try something out terminology wise? Let me know. LA Winter's asking, is this on Mac yet? Nope. And that's one of the biggest questions I have is why? I mean, why are they doing this weird split of features? And my guess is that because as you may have all been noticing, the Mac version isn't really getting a bunch of new features. We got the new sound library option just to download things, but we had that in the iPad version since day one of the iPad version. The iPad version has been catching up with the Mac version in terms of a lot of things, quick swipe comping and all of There are a bunch of other small features that it got that the Mac version has always had. But then in this last version, when this came out, version 3 for iPad of Logic Pro, it got this new browser functionality. And I've just been really experimenting with it lately. And it's really interesting. They barely even, they talked about it. It was in the release notes, but there was never like a big fanfare for it, which I think is interesting. And sometimes I wonder if Apple and the Logic team, when they think about talking about the new features like this, that they didn't do a ton of fanfare because it wasn't going into the Mac version. My theory has always been that the iPad version of Logic is the future version of Logic. I think this is the one that we're getting. I think one day we're all going to wake up and this is going to be the version that everybody will have access to. And there'll be a lot of people who say, well, that's it. I'm out of here forever. By the way, we got 13 votes and 85% of people use the Mac version. So overwhelmingly Mac audience for this. I'm just catching up on some comments for a second. Stunot. Cool. I think that it doesn't need it because there's usually plenty of screen real estate. You're talking about probably the tile thing, but that's not the point. The point is with the tiles, I think, just like with the smart controls, which I think is probably one of those features. If I did another poll and asked who used the smart controls in Logic Pro for Mac, that it would probably be around 85% that said they did not. I just I don't see a lot of people saying that the smart controls on Mac are like their favorite feature. They're powerful. It's an easy way to assign external MIDI controls and to combine controls. So I can take one knob and assign it to a bunch of controls and different instruments in Logic and have one external MIDI controller controlling a variety of parameters at different scale settings inside Logic. That's cool. But I have a feeling that most people are not using it that way. Another comment was the iPad is still growing, i.e. you can't have your plugins on one screen and Logic on the other. That's a huge limitation, isn't it? It's not just that. It's like, how many companies are developing plugins for the iPad right now? I've got some Waves plugins on my iPad, but they made a deal with Cubasis and Steinberg to do that, but you can't get them for Logic. And so we're all stuck in this limbo. The minute Logic Pro for iPad becomes the Mac version of Logic Pro, all of our plugins should theoretically work because they'll be on the Mac ecosystem. And so we'd be able to use that. We'd also probably have the removal of the window limitation, and plugins would be able to go on different screens or away from the main window. All of that stuff would change if it became a Mac version, I guess is what I'm saying. LA says, why don't they prioritize features for the Mac version that the vast majority of users want is beyond me. And it's because I think that they're tired of coding the Mac version, honestly. So people talk about the limitations of Logic Pro, and many of them would be fixed, I think, if the iPad version became the only version. Things like processor efficiency and being able to use the full power of your computer. I personally believe that the Mac version is full of inconsistencies, inefficiencies, and bugs that are too hard to fix given the age of the overall code. And the iPad version is going to solve all of that. They just need to give us the rest of what everybody wants from the Mac version, and I think that we'll be in a lot better place. I'm just looking at comments. I love comments. That's why we do this. It's because we have the best group of people who use Logic coming on here. Stunot says, what is missing from keeping you from writing a hit? Um, that's a question I want to ask a lot of people who, or not even a hit, but just music. I don't care about hits personally. If you've heard my music, you may agree that that's probably an obvious thing that I would say, but I personally feel like the machine of hit music is run by rich companies and rich people, and we're force feeding a lot of music onto younger generations. I see that with my kids all the time, and the media that they're put in front of sometimes is always funneling things to make certain people more money. So hits aside, I think having a meaningful music career is possible without ever having a hit. And then my question becomes, what are we missing in any of our software that would prevent us from making like meaningful music? And the truth is, not much these days. And I'm not just talking about Logic Pro. You could use almost any workstation and be okay. I'm not one of those people who insists that we have to have, one that's the best workstation. I know which workstations are not my favorite, but Logic has so many tools, and it can work in different ways for different people. If you want to just record your band in like a home studio or a pro studio, and you want to use the guitarist's guitar, amp, pedals, and effects, and the drummer's drums, and the bass player's bass and rig, and the keyboardist's keyboard with their effects, and use very little of like the session players or any of the effects or tools, the live loops, or the stem splitter. You don't have to use any of that stuff. Logic is still one of the better workstations for that workflow, in my opinion. It works. It doesn't crash that often. I haven't had any crashes lately at all. Now, some people get greedy with third-party plugins and managing their computer in various diverse ways, and you'll crash if you're not careful. But as a default experience, Logic is very reliable. And I'm on the latest of everything. It just doesn't crash. I have issues every once in a while, but they're all manageable. And most of the time I find out it's something I did, not something it did. And so there's that part of it. So you can create music. If you want to do loop-based production, you should really be on Ableton. But if you're not on Ableton and don't want to pay the upgrade amounts that they charge and have some of the issues that Ableton has, then we have live loops in Logic, and you can do a whole workflow around it. If you want to use this for performing on a stage, then Main Stage, which is essentially just part of Logic, would be a great choice for you. If you want to write music for movies, we have a full ability to load video files, really great tempo operations, all kinds of really useful things that would help you write the next score for a movie. I mean, you don't have to look at this and say, which I've heard a lot since the new version of Logic for Mac and iPad came out. Oh, they're going in a direction I don't want anymore, so I'm leaving. I mean, how stupid. That is the stupidest thing I've ever heard, because they're just adding features in a different direction. Most of the things that those people are talking about wanting or not wanting in Logic has been good for a long time. It has been really good at audio editing and mixing with basic effects for a very long time. I mean, sure, we need a new browser. That's what we're talking about today. The new browser on the iPad version has a lot of promise and some useful features, and it works relatively well, just because it needs more. It needs more of what they're doing with it in here. No question. Needs more, but this is really promising, and the Mac version doesn't have these features yet. Maybe, I mean, I'm assuming that we're going to get them eventually, but we didn't get them yet. But it wouldn't make sense just to drop the browser from the iPad version onto the Mac version. I'm assuming they're just counting down the months or years until the iPad version is the only version. And then we have this, it's too dark, but at least there's some contrast. Meaning, yeah, it's not navy blue with gray words. We have black with white words. That actually is the definition of contrast. And when I look at this on my iPad, which is sitting right here in front of me, by the way, when I look at this, I can see everything I need to see. Awesome. I think the contrast is better on the iPad version. I just need an iPad that is 2 screens big and that sit on stands on my desk, which makes it not an iPad anymore. Ha ha ha. Stunot says, I had a crash setting up MIDI Learn with my Launch Control XL3. Happened only once. I mean, I would love to know the full reliability of everyone's real usage of their personal workstation. It's like, I bet you Reaper has crashed on people before. Pro Tools I've seen crash in some of the worst situations. Full soundstage, full orchestra, choir, enormous amount of money being spent every minute, and Pro Tools crashes like 4 times. I mean, why are people still using that? Because they were smart and they got people to spend a bunch of money on their hardware, interfaces, control surfaces, video stuff, and mixing, all this stuff. It's once you spend that much money, you don't go back. They made it so it doesn't work with any other software. You can't just like cancel that halfway through like a year and realize that all the money you just put into this was wasted. And so they have to hire a full-time person who's fully trained, and they have to spend even more money to keep the ecosystem alive. And then they make it work. They get it to work in a reliable way. But it's not always guaranteed. I would hate to be running Pro Tools recording live concerts. That sounds like a disaster. Another comment, the more I used it, the less I miss the Mac version. I'm going to miss some of my plugins if I don't get to use them. And so there's still third-party things that I like to use that I can't use on my iPad. But those days are getting closer to being over because the operating system each time gets a little closer to one to the other. I don't think, at least from what Apple has shown, I don't think they're interested in making the iPad have the exact same operating system. They really are stuck on trying to get us to use the iPad OS the way that they want us to. They had that what is that stage thing called where you can make your apps like pop off from the side. I always turn it off because I don't like it. But if you look a little bit here, if I go up to the top of my iPad, now we have menus, and version 3 of iPad version of Logic Pro actually gave us like full set of menus. So they're all split into different things. Show the play surface. Nothing to do there, I guess. But now we have menus. We didn't know if we were ever going to get menus on the iPad. And so they're getting closer in ways that I think are useful and familiar. And they're finding where the edge of people's tolerance for having things be different on different platforms is. And of course, Apple's main goal has always been to make piles and piles of gold. And so I think that they are studying this all closely to see what is successful and what isn't. And they're not just doing things that people don't want. Although sometimes they do have a complex where they do things that they think people should want. And that's where we sometimes get updates where things are a little different. But for every one person who is like, I didn't want the stem splitter in Logic, there were tons of people who did. I guarantee. And for every person who says they didn't want the session players or whatever, there were other people who did and who are using them. There's no question. People are using some of this stuff. Plastodon says they really need to make, let's see, the transition in a short time and not years. Right? My guess is that because they're making touchscreen Macs, it will be by the end of the year when those are released. Who knows? I see a lot of the pieces all lining up. I do. I see a lot of the pieces lining up, and yet then we wait and we wait. And so the most important thing that any one of us could do is to realize that we're not waiting for functionality to make it so that we can use it to make music. That's not the goal that any of us should attach to, even subconsciously or inadvertently or accidentally. What we should be doing is waking up each day and making some music. And if you do that, then the tools will come and go, but it doesn't matter. You'll be making music every day the rest of your life. That's the mission here, isn't it? I'm fine. Plastodon says I'm fine using Logic as it is. So am I. And they've added, they've added features over the years that I like. Stuna, it's exactly what I was just saying. Stop worrying about features. Write a damn song. I agree. They've added features over the years. When I first started using Logic, well, I used some other version that eMagic had licensed out. That was my first workstation. I got it when I bought a MIDI keyboard at an Ultimate Electronics back in the, I don't know, over 25 years ago. I was in college. And it came with some software. I still have the disc someplace because, us Logic users were hoarders in some way or another. And so I have that. It still works on my Windows computer. It was a piece of Windows software at the time. And then I moved to North Carolina, started teaching at Appalachian State University. And a guy that I was starting to work with there in the mountains, he had a studio. He was using Logic after Apple had bought it. And I was like, yeah, it's maybe time to relook at this a little bit more seriously. And there was like a list of things. I made a list. And I was like, if they would fix these things, I could use Logic full time. Let me see if I can remember what they were. One of them was in the main window on our tracks where we have audio files. I was so used to editing in Pro Tools where you can just like zoom in and edit down to the sample right there in the main window. Logic, you couldn't do that. You had to go down to a separate file editor. It was wonky and horrible. It was not good. The editing of audio in Logic has a bad reputation for a reason. All of that is fixed now, but it was one of those things. Another thing that was wrong with Logic early on, at least in the Apple early on days, was when you froze a track to save resources, say I froze like an orchestral bank, it would leave all of the samples loaded in the memory and not actually unload that. So you would freeze and save some processor, but it would hold your RAM hostage. And so it was like things like that just never made sense. not having a true pan knob and just having a balance knob, which, by the way, if you load up a stereo track and pan it, you're still using the balance knob unless you actually change it manually. Like, what the heck? I don't even know. Do we have... I've never actually thought about that in the iPad version. Name, color, icon, duplicate. I don't see it in there. I don't know. I'd have to look. That's one of those things that I'm just like, wait a second. Are we still using the balance knob for everything here? Balance. It's a balance knob. I don't even know what to do with that information. Balance. Do we have... I'll have to look that up. Wow, that is just like mind-boggling. So balance knob, when that does, if you turn to the left, it just turns down the right side. It doesn't move it. So you would actually be missing the right channel if you pan to the left. Sounds like somebody in the Logic team doesn't fully understand, or maybe I just don't understand their thought process. Maybe I got to learn why it is that they think that that's the good idea. Another thing, we all hated Logic going only, Mac, and dropping PC because we wanted the freeze function. Yeah. I don't know. I'm okay with it being Mac only. I'm a huge fan of simplification in the development process. The companies that are designing for Mac, Windows, and Linux, and that's a task in and of itself. You have to have an extra team that knows more about the other platforms, and I think that that's hard. I actually don't mind having Logic work on Mac only. I don't think it's always helped them that much, meaning we still struggle with things like fully taking advantage of all the processing power of the computer, which is ironic that it's just two arms on the same body and they can't seem to figure that out. But I'm assuming there's something deeper to it than just me feeling like that's stupid. And so in some meeting, I'm positive that they were sitting there thinking, you know what? We can't fix these issues because, well, if you look back at the code, at one time it worked on an Atari, and some of that stuff is still hanging around. Simplification, but it's old and bloated, and all the features are bloated. And so they said, what if we made an iPad version? It probably won't be as successful as the Mac version, but you never know. But let's rebuild it from the ground up, and then one day when we're ready, we'll swap them or just replace the Mac version. Maybe nobody will notice. Maybe nobody will care. Turns out everybody will notice, everybody will care, but maybe we'll be better off because they were able to start that code in a different way and maybe do some of it right. So you never know. But for the time being, I'm curious now. We still got about 20 people. How many of you have? Well, most of you aren't using the iPad version, so that means most of you wouldn't have used the new browser functionality where we get to just type what we want, and it'll load up options for us. What I would want. Let me do it this way. So we have that functionality here for the loops. And the loops, it's a little bit of I don't know if it's a misnomer. I don't think it's that, but it's a little bit of a confusing example because the loops do talk about that section of some information which is looped, plays over and over and over, right? And with that section, in Logic, we often get a lot of other things. So, for instance, if I pull this drummer out here, this may just be an audio file. Let's see if I can... Yeah, so it doesn't have any audio effects or anything. But all of these other ones, like say we pull open the action movie one, right? We're going to pull this out to here. Action movie comes with the step sequencer region. And it comes with an instrument loaded. And sometimes these come with audio effects. And so we don't have to use the looped part of this. We can use the instrument that came with that loop in our song. So this whole functionality of finding something with, just typing in language that we might normally use. So let's do rich, edgy, industrial synth, right? So I just type in whatever I want, and it brings out this thing called fourth dimension sub bass. And say I'm like, ooh, that's the one I like. Let's pull that out. Wait. But I mean, instantly gonna just like click on that region and say delete. And then I just like close the whole thing. Okay, there we go. Yeah. So this whole functionality of searching for things is more than just about loops. It's about the whole ecosystem of what the loops offer. The instruments, which we can find, and then we can reprogram different MIDI for it or use a session player region to control it. We have tons of stuff that we can do with it. What would it take for me to switch over to the iPad version completely? It's a good question for myself. Using the iPad version on my Mac. That's what it would take for me to switch over all the way. Well, Professor, that's not fair. That's cheating. Because I just don't... Keyboards, control surfaces, my synthesizers, my breath controller, my other controller, all of my audio interface things that I got connected, my microphone attached to the wall. It's like all of this stuff. I don't want to be on an iPad with all of that stuff. I need all of that stuff to work at different times. So my iPad will never be the place that I work all the time. What I want is that piece of software, the iPad version of Logic, to just load up on my Mac and expand out to what I want it to have. So I would need the full spatial audio surround sound capabilities. I would need all of my third-party stuff to work. I need it to break apart from one window onto multiple monitors. Although I don't really use multiple monitors, I need my plugins to be outside of the window so I can put my plugins, editor screens. I would need all of my original Logic plugins to look the same way that they should look. For instance, let's see. So we have, let's do this. So we have, here's Alchemy, right? But Alchemy on the iPad is like a simplified version anyway. I can't do most of what I want to do with it. Let's do one more instrument, MIDI. Oh, just load up a default. I could have done that with the other stuff. This is the problem right here, all of this stuff. And then I have to go to edit. Edit mode? No, I want this mode. That mode. Alchemy. I want to replace this. Let's just go to retro synth for a second. Close all of these extra windows. This is retro synth. And it is useless. If you've ever watched me talk about this part of Logic, then you'll know how I feel. But when they got rid of the cool graphic interfaces, which sometimes I complained about, and made them 1,000 times worse on the iPad version, then it needs to change. Because, look at all these knobs and words that are just like, you might as well just put this in a list format. Like, why do we even have this in this format at all? The one nice thing about being most of us is that we have the ability to understand how things work. Not just as humans, but as experts. And many of you are Logic experts. You can come down and be like, ooh, there's oscillator 2, oscillator 1. There's my filter. I want to change my cutoff frequency and add some resonance. I know what I'm doing when I touch all of those knobs and faders. But when I'm working quickly or in a groove, what I don't want to have to do is come into this interface and have to read a bunch of things. I don't want to have to read what I'm doing. What I want is to have those visual cues that tell me more of what I'm going for and have that do it. One of the things that I would love about something like an integration with, generative AI or something like that is not so much the taking away of the musical process. I don't want that to happen. I think Suno takes away the integrity of music to a certain degree. It's a really cool piece of technology and people are using it as a tool. Awesome. That's not really what I mean. What I mean is if somebody was going to learn how to make music and then gives up that journey because Suno just does it for them, that's like a tragedy. That's more what I mean. But it's making music. Things can make music. Awesome. Whatever. But if I could come into Logic and say, hey, I have this idea for a sound and describe it, and then it would adjust all the parameters to create the thing that I was talking about and prompting, that would be awesome. And then we could actually use the keyboard to play that sound. That's no different than it's been forever. Some of the biggest names on the planet have had techs who helped program complex synthesizers for them. It's no different than that in some ways. At least in those ways, a human was still getting paid, probably poorly, but still paid. And in this way, a machine gets paid indirectly. But I think it would still be interesting use of that technology to describe something and have it tweak all the knobs to line up with what you said. It is possible. There's no question that that is possible. Um, it's just, I don't know if anyone's going to do it in Logic ever. Plason says 30-inch iPad with 20 Thunderbolt 5 ports, and I may go that route. Right? They could do it. They're not going to. And it may cost a lot. They should have an option for either views. Agreed. Cool. Well, we've been down some tangents here. If you have a chance to use the Logic Pro version for iPad and mess with the browser, you should. It is really interesting, this typing in what you want and it finding it for you. We need a few things for this to be really successful. One is that type of thing needs to work with all of the library in the browser. So not just with loops, but with instrument patches, audio patches, the samples, the plugin presets. I mean, how useful to bridge this over to those other areas, right? So more than just the loops. We need the promise of the new sound library to really fulfill the dream by adding new content much more frequently. It needs to add content. We should be getting content on a weekly basis. Do you know how many things they've added to Logic Pro through the sound library since this was announced, a month or so ago? Months, right? We're getting close to months. Pretty soon we'll be in summer and then we'll be in the fall. How many things have they used this new fancy sound library to add into our ecosystem of things? This many. Zippo. So, subscription model expanded out. It hasn't taken over the Mac version, but we've always had subscription on the iPad. How many additional things were added based on the subscription on the iPad version? Nothing. So what's the point of a subscription model when there's no benefit on a weekly or monthly basis for being a member of that thing? Well, they want to charge for some of the services that are eventually going to be requiring back-end support on Apple servers, which Logic does use when you download it, I suppose. And every time you delete some of the sound library and then reinstall it, that's like resources that Apple's having to expend, but it's pretty minimal in the scope of the universe. So I don't know. I wish they would do that. Now I still subscribe to Reason, the full version of Reason with Reason Rack. I use the Rack a lot. And they give out new sound banks and things every week. Every week I get content for that subscription. I've never felt better about being a subscriber than when I get content. I know, Stu Not, that is true. However, it's a choice they made not to do upgrade costs. Upgrade costs are a thing that they could have done. Almost every other workstation does upgrade costs. Some of them are exorbitant. Exorbitant? Some of them are a lot. Hundreds of dollars a year to get the newest version every year when they release them. And Apple has just said, it's like, I hope they didn't lose the long-term perspective on how many new computers some of us have bought over the course of our careers. It's like, I get new computers. That should count for something. And if I didn't use Logic like this, would I still be using a Mac? Well, probably, but maybe not. I did buy a really big gaming computer during the pandemic. turns out it's still running really well. Um, Another year or two, and I'll have to upgrade that. So it's like, yeah, we're paying for development of this stuff by buying their equipment all the time. And many of us have spent a lot of money on Macs, not just the default little Neo. You know what I mean? We're not buying the cheapest one you possibly can. No, we are buying the expensive ones. So I don't mind. Subscription for me is not a big deal, but it is for some people. It's like a hill to die on for many. It's not for me. And the reason being, well, I have the version of Logic that's not subscription. But I also currently have the Creator Studio stuff. So I've got both. That's how you have to run Logic for iPad. And as an educator, it's cheap. So there's always that part. Any other people want to share any thoughts? I think we're getting to a good place where the ranting is going to end. This turned out to be, well, at the beginning of the stream, it kind of freaked me out when my Mac took over the iPad's keyboard and I couldn't type any words. That made the beginning of the stream a little bit bumpy, but I think we'll leave this one up, and hopefully people will get past the blip of it. That was unexpected for sure. That's the problem, I think, with streaming. I don't do that much streaming with iPad, partially because it's actually really tricky. There's a lot of difficult parts with how I do this to make it work, but overall, today was pretty successful. David is saying, how are you getting audio out the iPad to the speaker? So I will fill you, since you're asking. Here's the thing that I did and do when I do this, because it was tricky. I use OBS as my streaming software. That is kind of what connects to YouTube, and it has a number of inputs that I can set up. I used to use a thing called Parrot, which let me AirPlay to the Mac, but that was like years and years ago. Now I load up Zoom, the thing we use for video calls, and I screen share my iPad into Zoom because it has an AirPlay option. I can AirPlay my iPad directly into Zoom, and I say share audio, and then I say to OBS, I want you to have one of your sources be this window as a part of Zoom. So it looks at Zoom and grabs the iPad screen and grabs the audio from it. So it's like a complicated thing. I use all of that with Audio Mover's Omnibus to help route all of my audio. It's tricky. It is not easy to do what appears to be kind of simple right here with the iPad on my screen and having sound and everything, but it is go back if anyone's interested in more connections with your iPad and your computer. I've done a number of videos in the past. I should probably do an updated one at some point, but about IDAM, which is the inter-device audio and MIDI protocol in Mac OS. And what that does is lets you hook up your iPad with, your normal USB-C charging cable. And then the iPad becomes an audio interface for anything inside your Mac. So, and MIDI. It does MIDI both ways, audio just from the iPad into the computer. And so I can turn in my iPad into like a MIDI device. So any instruments that I have on my iPad that I want to use inside Logic, I use an external instrument. The MIDI goes out to the iPad. The audio comes from the iPad into Logic. And then I can just play with my normal keyboards and things. It's really slick. I don't do it a ton as much as I used to. I'm really happy with my onboard instruments on my Mac. But every once in a while, there's something that I want to get from there, and so I'll do that. And it does tend to work as long as I don't push it too hard. And the timing is decent, but it's not perfect. I don't think anyone's sitting on the Mac side optimizing it very often. Okay, this is a great time. Thanks for watching, everybody. Don't forget, if you are watching, that there's a link in the description for our Discord. We're almost up. Let me see how many people have joined the Discord at this point. It's a good group. I got to tell you, there's people in there who are posting their projects that they work on every single day. It's a small Discord right now, so it's the best time to join before it blows up. But we've got like 19 members, so 19 people. I just do casual marketing for that, just talking about it on videos. But go join our Discord. There's the link, like I said, in the description. And there's a number of different areas. I'm kind of working on letting it sit for a month or two, and then I'll probably reformat just a little bit to see how people are using it. Pay attention to how people want to use it. But there's an area to post up projects and get feedback. There's just general chat. You can just talk to people. When I think about it, I post up links to these streams, but that may be one of the areas that goes away. We'll see. But there's just a lot of like my favorite people on the planet have joined, and it's a good place to go in there. As it gets bigger, it'll get a little bit noisier, meaning more people will talk and it'll be trickier to moderate. So at this point, we're just kind of letting it build. The whole goal of it was to make a place where we could all just gather outside of streams and chats on streams, and people can ask questions or talk about what's going on, or just connect. I just think it's like I don't want to wake up in 10 years and realize that all of this time that I've done on this channel and meeting a ton of awesome people, and like we just never really kept anything going. So this is our chance to build that community and share and talk and mostly just geek out about Logic Pro. That's really the main point. But even if we wanted to, we could start up some other channels on that server and talk about other random things. I don't. It's like the sky's the limit. It's like we're in charge of ourselves, and we shouldn't let AI or social media dictate how we do some of that stuff. So I feel pretty strongly about it. Go check it out. Join us. And you can skulk in the shadows and never say anything, or you can be a super active participant. We do and will, because I'm running it. Anybody who is offensive or goes off topic in a way that's not cool will just be booted. And so we'll keep that group the one place that is not political. It's like I'm not interested in Facebook right now, because every time someone posts something, it turns political, and I'm just like, I'm so over that. This is not what that's for. This is for Logic Pro, and for those of us who really care and want to communicate. Anyway, I ramble. I like to talk, and we're gonna pull the plug on this stream. So thanks everybody. That was awesome. Thanks for everybody who's commented. But now's the time. We're going to pull the plug on the stream. I'm going to go get some lunch. Talk to you later.